at it again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they've been through lockdown after lockdown, you know, beating pets to death in the street so that they wouldn't have to worry about feeding them. And
Right.
just, you know, really brutalizing their people.
They're a brutal nation.
They are very brutal.
I mean, their government and their whole social order is extremely brutal. And I think if people really knew what that was like and how that was structured, they wouldn't want any part of it.
Right, but our elite, especially the Davos crowd, they love the China model.
That's their model.
They love that. That's their go-to model for how things in the world should be.
Absolutely.
You know, China has already implemented a social score.
Right, the social credit system.
Social credit system, and you have to have a cell phone, and they give you a QR code.
Mm-hmm.
And everywhere you go, you have to scan that QR code. So that's how they track people, and that's how they control people.
Right.
And if you don't comply, if you dissent from what they're saying, as we do with our government, as you know, we look at things and say, well, that's not true. The government's lying. Joe Biden's lying. Well, we don't have a QR code that we have to scan on the phone every time we go somewhere and do something. And they don't have the power to turn it red, which means you're cut off.
Right. Well, you know, I mean, that stuff's coming.
They want that
They
stuff.
want that here.
They absolutely want those things.
Yeah.
And you know, it just happened that the QR codes of a group going to stage a protest in China all got cut off at the same time. Yeah, they froze their bank deposits. So they were going to complain about this.
Which actually, I'm surprised they were willing to even do that. That's a fairly bold, aggressive move on the part of citizens to actually go protest anything, because in China, they disappear you in a second if they decide they want to.
Absolutely do. Whether you're a head of a big corporation over there or a lowly little peasant.
That's correct.
Yes, they will load you up in the middle of the night and never to be seen again.
Has anybody seen Jack Ma lately? I mean, you know, he's the, for people who don't know who he is, he's the founder and I guess you know, head guy at Alibaba, which is the Chinese equivalent of Amazon. And for a while, all we heard about was Alibaba, and it was and Jack Ma, one of the richest men in the world. And then he said or did something that displeased the authorities, and boom, you know, haven't seen hide nor hair of him for a long time. I don't think they killed him. He disappeared for a while. I think he has been cited, but I think they neutered him quite a bit.
I think so. I think they told him, you know, either get with the program or he's going to have to give up everything he's got.
Right. And that's how it works there, you know. I mean, essentially, it's no different. You know, the best analogy I can think of is, you know, it's like the mob. It's like the New York, New Jersey mob scene is depicted in movies like The Godfather or The Sopranos, that kind of thing. You know, you're in bed with them as a business. They're the final authority on what you say and do. They get a huge cut of what you do without any contribution to the effort. Okay, and you don't do business without their favor, their acquiescence. And that's essentially what you have in a system, in any of these communist systems, and China's the best example of it. It's basically a criminal enterprise in the form of their national government that controls and owns the means of production.
Yeah, kind of like we're developing here in this country with the Biden cartel that's currently in power, and some of these corporate entities.
Yeah, the tech industry, the tech oligarchies.
Yeah. So, you know, China, and it's funny because several years ago I got into a discussion with an individual, and it was on Facebook because I was critical of China, and he said, you're so wrong. He said, China they just want to compete with us, and they're just another competitor, and blah, 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 blah. They have the same freedoms over there that we have over here. And
Wasn't that Joe Biden's pitch?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, you are one dumb son of a gun.
Very naive.
Very naive.
What the communists call a useful idiot.
Exactly. A useful idiot. And, you know, there are a lot of useful idiots out there, and we saw that during the COVID lockdowns. We saw the useful idiots who bought into everything that Fauci said.
You got to figure the communists are looking there saying, yeah, there are a lot of useful idiots, but a lot of them aren't even very useful. I mean, that's kind of my assessment.
This is true, and that's why they murder off millions of people over there, because they round up the ones that are not even useful, and those go first. So keep that in mind, all you
nobody ever bothers to ask, well, what about the useless idiots? What happens to them? Well, they get, I think.
Exactly, I think so. Well, speaking of a useless idiot, It just happens to bring the vice president to mind.
I was gonna say, you're gonna have to be
Kamala
specific.
Harris, yeah, Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Who has now been tasked to head up the rebranded Disinformation Governance Board.
And that's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it is.
They're not even trying to be, remotely opaque about it. I mean, I talk about an obvious, well, we'll just shift it over here to Kamala.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and cackling Kamala. And she's going to address harassment, abuse, and disinformation campaigns targeting women and the LGBTQI plus individuals. Now, first of all, I don't know of an organized campaign out there to do this, and it looks to me like members, as evidenced by libs of TikTok, and from what I've seen as well, it looks to me like the feminist, the coat hanger crowd, and the LGBTQI plus whatever.
Or the keyboard crowd.
The keyboard crowd.
Right.
It appears to me that they're the ones who are on the aggressive.
They absolutely are.
That they are, attempting to cancel people and shut people down. And, we had one in Durham the other day. And I was going to talk about this later in the show, but, we had a woman in Durham who infiltrated Moms for Liberty.
Yeah.
Now,
a Facebook group.
A Facebook group. Now, where's our? You got Mothers Against Drunk Driving. You got Mothers of this, Mothers for that, and all these mothers groups. What's the problem with Moms for Liberty?
Well, liberty is now code in their mind for,
white supremacy and everything. Yeah.
All the things.
All the boogeymen.
Right.
That they see lurking behind every tree.
Right. That's right.
They used to claim that the Birchers and the conservatives of the 50s and 60s saw communists behind every tree.
Right. To which my response was, no, we see you planting trees in front of all the communists.
That's exactly right.
I had a teacher actually ask me that in school here in Rocky Mountain.
Really?
Why do you always find communists behind every tree? I said, why are you always planting trees in front of all the communists? One of my rare impromptu moments that worked out real well.
But, these people see a white supremacist around every turn.
Well, they just...
the racism thing is it's evolved now.
Well, it's kind of like the old phrase, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Exactly.
When you're an obsessed, deranged communist mentality, everything's a white supremacist and everything's a fascist and everything's a capitalist pig.
Exactly.
It's the same. The terminology's changed some. Nobody says capitalist pig anymore, but that was essentially the phraseology of the late 60s and early 70s. But it's all the same stuff, all feeding the same narrative. And the only difference between the past and now is that there's all this very, very pervasive technology, that allows, for example, this situation where this woman, with probably not a whole lot to do, too much time on her hands, infiltrating some other group's ability to assemble and associate freely, and ultimately what she did was sabotage their plans to meet at a local restaurant in Raleigh, and she somehow made it so that the restaurant canceled their reservation, to meet. And she said, well, we've infiltrated. But what it demonstrates to me about these people is that on some level they know that they're unable to debate the issues on the substance of the debates.
Exactly.
Their entire strategy is shut up, we're shutting you down, we're not going to let you talk, Why? Because if our side is allowed to talk, the other side will be out-logicked and out-argued, and will quickly expose the almost neurotic, deranged, mental deviant nature of the left's perspective. And this woman in Raleigh who perpetrated this little action against Moms for Liberty, perfect prime example of that kind of hysterical, neurotic, female persona.
Exactly. It was interesting. I went on TikTok and looked her up, and watched some of her clips.
Yeah.
And, one of our arguments was, well, we're all in this together. We're all paying high prices for gas and groceries, and we're all facing this inflation. So why can't we all just get along and include everyone, except Moms for Liberty?
I was going to say, that seems rather contradictory.
It is a lesson in contradiction and hypocrisy.
Well, this thing Kamala Harris is heading up, it seems to me, based on the list of possibly harassed and aggrieved groups, they're all just leftists.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean,
exactly.
And yet, who are the most persecuted elements in our society right now? Christians, conservatives, gun owners, white males.
Yep.
Okay. There's no, nobody's erecting a program or an office or a mechanism to ensure that they're not harassed through these online mechanisms. And, it seems like to me the whole thing is clearly just an effort to control speech. And we've talked about this before, and we say it a lot, but it really is Orwellian, as in George Orwell's 1984, where words are being used that mean the exact opposite of their actual dictionary meaning. And if it weren't so serious and ultimately deadly, it'd be comical to watch, because it's just playing out according to such an obvious and predictable formula, and one that's been played out historically many, many times, throughout history. French Revolution, Bolshevik Revolution, Chinese Communists, Pol Pot in Cambodia, and numerous others. And now it really does seem to be flowering in full bloom here in the United States of America.
It is.
Hard to imagine, hard to take.
It absolutely is. And, they claim that online harassment has devastating costs for democracy itself, by undermining people's ability to exercise their human rights and participate in democracy, governance, and civic life.
Which right there, that's nonsense. What are we talking about? We're talking about Twitter.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
We're talking about social media mechanisms and accounts, which first of all are voluntary. If you don't want to listen to if you think people are going to say something negative about you, don't sign up. Don't participate. I mean, it seems like at a time when we have the most ability to communicate with each other, we've become the most sensitive and vulnerable and hand-wringing and again, neurotic.
Yeah. You know what? When somebody posts a comment toward me, this derogatory or just ad hominem, just ignore it.
Who cares?
It's like, well, who cares? I don't have to respond to it. I don't have to be affected by it.
You know that 99% of these comments people would not make if they were actually
face
in person.
Exactly.
And you could argue, that these mechanisms are actually healthy. They let people vent some of this. It's like when people say, "Oh, our politics are so divisive, and the politicians, why can't they get something done?" Well, I don't think people realize what the purpose of these political structures like the Congress and the House, they're there to divert and negotiate and manage the various impulses and conflicts among the people. Otherwise, we end up killing each other.
Right.
Frankly, I'm happy when the politics is divisive in the House or in the Senate.
As am I.
As opposed to everybody, because if everybody's getting along, that means one side's selling out the other.
Well,
or one side's selling one side's selling their constituents out.
Exactly. We're getting the shaft.
Which in this case is us.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, the people who vote for Republicans and all are continually disappointed.
Yeah.
I am.
Well, right now we've got that group of Republicans trying to craft some gun control.
Correct.
And fortunately, I saw an article today that said they're having trouble reaching a consensus.
Well,
and there's some delays in that. And I'm like, well, you know what? That's great.
Yeah, and that's probably because specifically John Cornyn got roundly booed at a Republican event in Texas. John Cornyn is one of the senators from Texas who was one of the chief sponsors of this compromise structure framework that all these senators came up with to, again, erode and chip away at your Second Amendment rights.
And I might add that he's on his way out.
He's on his way out.
So he has nothing other than the time he's in office.
Well, like our Tom Tillis and Richard Burr, they're not up again either. They're retiring or getting out, or at least I'm not sure about Tillis, but I think he's supposedly that's the case.
I know Burr is, and Tillis doesn't have another election for 4 years.
Right. So I'll make this point. The fact that they're willing to go with that position tells you right there where their genuine allegiances lie.
Exactly.
It'd be one thing if they could say, well, I kind of have to for political expediency and I've got to be able to work with these. No, what they're doing is they're taking the position that they can afford to take when they don't have to care anymore. And in that case, and in this case rather, that's not the one that we want them to take. That's the anti-Second Amendment position, the anti-liberty position.
Exactly.
It's really frustrating. And I'll tell you, the main reason speaking for myself, that I'm so viscerally opposed to any measures whatsoever is that none of them are made in good faith.
Right. That's
Okay.
right.
These Democrats and these leftists, all they want is the steady, progressive erosion of our rights under the Second Amendment to the Constitution to keep and bear arms. I have a young friend up in Massachusetts, a young engineer, and his wife is very liberal, and he's really not. Mm-hmm. And he was having the argument with her, and because she's extremely, anti-gun, and that's kind of a necessary condition of citizenship up there. But there are a few people who don't think that way.
Right.
And he told her, he said, well, the reason I won't accept any kind of restrictions whatsoever legally that you propose is because they're never in good faith. They always want to come back for more the next time.
Right.
So there's no reason to give them anything.
Not a bit.
We never get anything.
No.
We always give.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so that's my position on that.
Well, I share those sentiments. And with that, we got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how the so-called fact checkers actually proved something that they claimed was false. Mm-hmm. So, which they do that all the time,
Sure,
really.
well.
But in this case, we're going to talk about it. So stay tuned for more America in Danger. We'll be right back.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearm students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we are back. And recently the Untraceable Firearms Act was passed. Mm-hmm. And there's some shenanigans going on over at ATF with the definition of a receiver and various things. And we know that the ATF is a master at kind of obfuscating everything. Their definitions are so outlandish and just ridiculous that most people can't interpret them.
Well, they can well, it's like an IRS thing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Purposely vague.
Purposely vague, and our Supreme Court is supposed to strike down laws like that are purposely vague.
Right.
I mean, when legislators write purposely vague laws, they write them for one reason and one reason alone. They write them to take away your rights.
That's right, and to give maximum flexibility to regulators and law enforcement to do what they want.
Exactly. It's just like a kangaroo court.
Yeah.
Which we see in the January 6th Commission. I mean, talk about a kangaroo court.
Really,
Talk about a scripted media clown circus.
It really is.
It is just so ridiculous.
But apparently that's the consensus, because it's not getting very good ratings.
It's not getting.
General,
it isn't even getting as good a ratings as CNN Plus got.
Right. Well, that's saying something.
It really is.
And as I understand it, they're all reading directly off teleprompters. The whole thing is completely scripted. I mean,
well, they hired a Hollywood producer to run the thing, which tells you right there that these people are not genuine.
They're not.
Otherwise, they would say, yeah, we're going to have hearings just like we normally do.
Right.
You can set your cameras up.
That's right.
We're going to be the senators and congressmen that we normally are.
No, it's all theater.
It's all phony baloney theater, exactly. Well, the Gun Owners of America, which is a great organization because they don't spend a lot of time wasted on side issues and what have you. They go for the throat on gun.
They're fairly pure on the issue.
Fairly pure on the issue. But Gun Owners of America tweeted that the bill, the Untraceable Firearms Act, H.R. 7910, would criminalize disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling your gun without a firearms manufacturer's license.
Mm-hmm.
All right, which it would. It's kind of like the universal background checks that would make it illegal for you to loan your firearm to someone without a background check.
Right.
Be careful what you ask for.
That's right.
But anyway, the twit heads, or the fact checkers over at Twitter, the twit heads, said, oh no, that tweet is false. That tweet is false. They said, well, we acknowledge that the language of the bill is confusing and ambiguous and, could get someone charged. But nobody's ever going to be charged under that.
I love those kinds of rules,
Yeah, it's well, they're making the law, but nobody will ever be charged. It's kind of like the Foreign Agent Act. Right? I think there were like 2 prosecutions in 50 years up till now.
Yeah.
And now they're prosecuting everyone except Hunter Biden, of course,
that's right.
who was the biggest foreign agent that I know of. But now they're charging all of these conservatives. Well, they tried to charge some people in the Trump administration.
Well, didn't they try and charge Michael Flynn? Wasn't that one of the things they tried and get him?
Yes, they did.
Because he, a couple of days before the transition, he talked to a Russian counterpart, really just saying, "Hey, heads up, I'm the guy."
I'm coming in. We're going to be dealing with each other. Yeah. I tell you what, these legislators right now, if this is not French Revolution stuff. I don't know what is.
Well, that's right.
It's kangaroo court stuff. The congressmen and people can lie, bald-faced lie. Schumer, Schiff, Nadler. What'd they say for 4 years? I've seen the evidence.
That's right.
I've seen the evidence. Okay, well.
We know now, definitively, this isn't some, speculative Alex Jones kind of, ranting.
Right.
This is hard, determined fact that it was all made up.
All made up.
I mean, the Sussman trial showed that. Yeah. Even though he was found not guilty, the things that were revealed during that trial, the primary revelation was that the whole Russia hoax thing came from Hillary.
Yep, exactly. And, he should have been found guilty. We know why he was not found guilty.
Even the jurors, the foreman jurors, all of which were DC types and Clinton donors and actually hooked up with the judges.
Even the judge.
Right, was tied in with this crowd. But she said, well, it just isn't worth our time.
Right.
But basically she acknowledged that he was guilty.
Yeah.
Just not going to go there.
Not going to convict him. Yeah. We take a strong position on no compromise on the Second Amendment.
Absolutely, I do too.
There's no compromise. I'm sorry. There is no reason to compromise.
That's correct.
You can pull your emotions out and you can boo-hoo and you can put all these things together. But you know what? I don't buy that.
Yeah.
I'm not going for that. No compromise on the Second Amendment. And I'm going to tell you why there can never be any common sense laws. And I have a meme to show that you sent me the other day. I want to show this. Lee, if you'll pull up that red flag meme, this is the danger with these red flag laws. All right? The nitwit on the left is saying red flags will only disarm the criminals.
And the extremists.
The terrorists and the extremists.
Right.
The gentleman on the right says, well, you thought moms at school board meetings were terrorists.
Right.
So thank you, Lee. So that's the point right there. What they're defining as terrorist, extremist, well, we're extremists.
That's correct.
We would be on the extremist list.
That's correct.
For doing this show, for pushing back on these people, for pushing back on these tyrants, or at least expressing our opinion to push back on them.
Well, ultimately, I mean, the gun thing, it really is. I mean, if there were one minor tweak I would make to the ordering of the Bill of Rights, I think the Second Amendment should be the First Amendment, because from that fundamental right to be armed as a population within the rubric of a governing structure comes all the other rights and liberties we have. Otherwise, they're just words on paper.
Well, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. It's just like I talked about last week, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights coming out of the United Nations.
That's right.
Every right that they grant is as allowed by law.
Right. And so we hear the phrase in our founding documents and writings, consent of the governed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the governed have to have a mechanism by which to not consent. Okay, if that phrasing has any meaning.
Yeah.
Okay, and ownership of firearms, the same kinds of firearms that the police and the military have, and that's what was understood. We all act like all this stuff was created in a vacuum. One only has to go back and read the writings of the founders at the time, the contemporaneous writings of Publius, which is the pen name used for all the different Federalist papers, which were John Jay and John Adams and all the different founding fathers. And it's quite clear that they understood that an armed population acts as a check against tyranny and usurpation of individual rights. That's the issue. It's not about the crime. It's not about the suicides. It's not about any of these things. Should an 18-year-old be allowed to buy a firearm? Well, only if that 18-year-old is allowed to vote and has full rights of citizenship. Now, I'm open to debating that. Frankly,
Yeah.
I don't think 18-year-olds should be allowed to vote.
Nor
I
do
don't
I.
think 30-year-olds, most 30-year-olds should be
Well,
allowed to vote if you want to get right down to it.
I agree.
But, one time in this country, 21 was pretty universally, across the board, the age at which a person was considered an adult and had all the rights and obligations, of
Yeah.
citizenship.
Well, the 26th Amendment didn't pass until like 1971,
That's right.
72, in
That's
that
right.
time frame.
That's right.
And it only passed because of the emotional ploy that the media pushed that, well, if these 18-year-olds are going off to die in Vietnam, then they should be able to vote.
Right. That's
Well,
right.
that doesn't fly.
It doesn't.
The reasons they're so suitable to go off to war and die, I certainly don't want any of them to go off and die. But the reason for that is they are young and dumb.
Right.
And bulletproof, 10 feet tall.
That's right.
They are ready
That's
to go
right.
off and charge into a fully automatic machine gun.
Exactly the characteristics that don't make for thoughtful and considered voting.
There you go. There you go.
So it's not in an 18-year-old's interest for 18-year-olds to be voting, frankly.
It is
because
not.
An 18-year-old mentality, frankly, is much more likely to get you involved in a war.
Yeah.
Okay. They always act like, well, you don't have to go off and do the fighting. Well, most people don't want to pursue war. Okay, unless it's something like a Ukraine situation where we have these grand designs
Right.
by some of these elites. But in general, I don't think that war is mitigated by letting people who are unqualified to vote.
Right. I
think,
agree.
in fact, it's probably more likely to occur.
Well, it is, because if you look at the college crowd, on the whole Ukraine thing, and half the members of Congress,
Right.
they were ready to load up 18-year-olds
That's right.
and ship them over to Ukraine to fight against the Russians.
Well, actually, if you look at all the violent revolutionary movements throughout history, again, they always made use of the young people.
Yes, they did.
They get them wrapped up, ginned up, and
Well,
the
they-
next thing
they
they're
did.
hanging people, cutting people's heads off, breaking
Yeah.
glass windows, the
Yep.
brown shirts in Nazi Germany, the
Yes.
African National Congress in South Africa, the Red Guard communists of communist China, Mao's Red Guard, the Bolsheviks, all of them employed these 17 to 20-year-old types who get very impassioned. So, they shouldn't be voting. And, if you're willing to have the entire discussion, sure, I'm willing to say, you can't own a firearm without.
Yeah.
But that's not what these people are looking to do.
No,
What these
it is
people are looking
not.
to do is erect these red flag laws, which fundamentally make it so just a malicious complaint directed at you can authorize the police to come into your home and collect and take your firearms. Okay. Well, I'm
Exactly.
sorry, that's wrong.
Yeah, the red flag laws are dangerous.
And frankly, I'll just say, I'd rather live in a society where there's the occasional risk of a mass shooting or something that's tantamount to getting struck by lightning. Okay, unlikely. I would rather live there than in a society where only the police and the military have the guns. That is a recipe for tyranny and the biggest mass murders.
It
the
is.
biggest mass murders throughout history have all been perpetrated by governments against their unarmed citizens.
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly right. You know.
So yeah, I'm with you. No compromise.
Yeah, no compromise. Absolutely no compromise. Now, Gavin Newsom, the disgraced governor of California, Governor Hair Gel, as he's often
Okay,
called.
well, that's a good name.
Yeah, you know, he's taken to Truth Social. He's joined Trump's Truth Social
Yeah, I saw that.
to disprove, to debunk the claims of the red left, or the red right, rather, the red conservatives, the conservative waves. Well, you know, while he's on there trying to argue that, you know, California is not becoming murder capital of the world,
And poverty capital of the
poverty
world.
capital of the world, homeless capital of the world,
Yeah.
drug capital of the world, illegal immigrant capital of the world, he's trying to corner the market on, you know, these kind of things. In the article, what really struck me was the fact that new data has come in. You know, all of these cities and states are supposed to report up to the FBI. The FBI compiles a national database
Right.
on murders.
Right.
You know, race, sex, gender, method, you know,
All the metrics.
all the metrics. Well, right now, we've got 40% of law enforcement agencies across the U.S. who are not reporting. And the major cities, Los Angeles, New York, 5 or 6 of the most populous states, just not reporting.
Right.
You know,
That
why?
skews the numbers.
Why? I'm going to tell you why. It's the same reason that they stood down to let rioters burn, loot, and kill. It's the same reason that they say, oh, they're mostly peaceful protest. They don't want the real numbers to get up there. This is part of their denial. They're just hiding the information.
Right.
You know, as the red states say, look, you know, you really got a problem in some of these blue states where they're defunding police. The blue states are saying, oh, no, we don't have any problem at all. Everything is great.
Even though San Francisco, the reference standard city for liberal thinking and completely deranged left-wing thought, recalled their district attorney, one Chesa Boudin.
Boudin, who is the son of
Whether underground murderers, or at least they were complicit in a murder. They were involved in a Brinks car robbery, okay, in which a couple of guards were killed. I don't think they were actually involved firsthand in the murder, but they were in prison and they were found guilty. He's tied up. I mean, Chesa Boudin, his pedigree is a fine one. It's his parents. It's Bernadine Dorn. It's Bill Ayers, you know, of Barack Obama fame.
Yeah.
Also, Weather Underground. These are all hardcore militant
tenured professor at Ivy League
Absolutely,
college.
well, like Angela Davis. You know, also, these are all hardcore militant communist revolutionaries from the `60s. And Chesa Boudin was the district attorney.
Yeah.
And you know, you sort of work these things up in your mind. You know, I'd never heard him speak, and I thought, wow, he must be really a sinister element, because basically he's promoting and allowing murder to occur. You know, just and what's going on here? Make no mistake, these woke district attorneys, they're weaponizing criminals against the middle class. They're
Exactly.
They're in there with the philosophy that this society is fundamentally unjust, and we're going to turn the worst elements of this society against the citizens. Okay, so that's what Chesa Boudin was doing. All right, but I heard him speak, and he's this kind of borderline effeminate, lisping, kind of unimpressive individual altogether. I mean, I thought, I mean, now in San Francisco, I get it. But I don't understand how people in general are tolerating these DAs. You've got him, you got Gascon out in Los Angeles, you got Krasner up there in Philadelphia. There was one, who was the one, I think she lost her job, the one that was prosecuting the couple who brandished the AR-15 in Missouri.
I can't think of what her name was.
You know, another one of these types, you know, Kim Fox, who recently was on the bubble for slapping her husband in a domestic abuse thing. She's the one that was You know,
I hate to laugh about that.
yeah,
but
she was
in this case, it's funny.
Oh, it's hilarious. She was the one that was in charge of the Justice Smollett thing and dropped the charges and let all that slide. And she's one of these also, basically the restorative justice, you know, let's use criminals to exact revenge on the population for all the perceived injustices of the past.
Right.
That's what's going on.
That's exactly what it is.
You know, and if you don't have to dig very deep for them to tell you that's what's going on.
That's right.
Okay.
That's exactly
So these
right.
people are starting to get recalled. So there is starting to be some pushback against this just complete insanity.
Well, there should be, and insanity sums it up perfectly. The inmates are running the asylum.
They
in this
really
country
are
right now.
Yeah.
In fact, when we come back from break here, we are going to talk about some of the inmates running the asylum.
Okay.
So stay tuned for more America in Danger. We'll be right back.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearm students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we are back, and as I was saying before break, we are living in a world where the inmates are running the asylum. We really are. You know, transgenderism is taking main stage right now.
Unbelievably so.
Unbelievably so. And you know, it's interesting because I read an article about the freshman class at Princeton, I believe it was. And they were talking about that they calculate roughly 7% of the population falls into the LGBTQI plus category.
Which, you know, 7% seems high unless you're going to include every kind of deviant behavior there is. So then maybe,
that's one of the problems.
It still seems high.
With that.
I just don't believe 7% of this population are,
I think it's high myself. But that's one of the problems I have with that plus on the end of it. because that plus includes pedophiles,
The bestiality crowd,
the bestiality crowd, the puppy love crowd,
right. The furries, the infantilists. That's a real there's a real segment of the gene pool.
Yeah, and now radical feminists are joining in on that, which I really don't understand that. But what really shocks me, and this shows the make-believe aspect of this, the mental part of this,
right.
the phony part of it, is that 24% of the entering class at Princeton identifies as LGBTQI+.
Yeah.
So how is it that they're getting a larger share than the proportion across the board to one college?
Either contemporaneously or historically.
Yeah.
I mean, and so what that does is belie the argument that there's some kind of a category that's been oppressed all these years. No, this is a made-up category where psychological manipulation and indoctrination is being used on young people who are often confused or just want to be trendy or counterculture or whatever is motivating them to embrace this nonsense. And it is nonsense. First of all, again, we're always told we believe the science. What about the science? Well, does it make sense to anybody, from a biological perspective, that any animal population would suddenly spontaneously develop a condition, which meant that 20 to 30% of its members would not be able to reproduce?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't. It doesn't follow the science.
It doesn't follow the science, and unless you want to make some really, really extreme argument that confined in places and overpopulation produces these behaviors and all that. I haven't heard anything like that.
Wait, I know. Global warming. Climate change. Got to be it.
Well, then, but see, they would never embrace that because then they wouldn't want to solve climate change because they love their transgenderism.
They'd all be driving diesel vehicles out there.
That's right. Because,
with no DEF systems on them.
Right. No, it truly is. It's I think in the vast majority of individuals who are expressing that condition, it's just palpable mental illness of some kind.
It is.
Okay. And then you've got others who have found that they can get attention with it, Yeah. And so they aren't really that. And if they're foolish enough to pursue the transgender regimen to its logical conclusion, where they actually have mutilating surgeries and other irreversible, drug therapies and surgeries, well, they live to regret it, And I've said before, I think this period of time medically, with respect to this transgender nonsense, will be viewed at least as being as barbaric as the trivial use of lobotomy was in the 40s and 50s, where they were lobotomizing people right and left for the sniffles, just about. I mean, people would go into hospitals for unrelated things. They'd end up with a prefrontal lobotomy. An outrageous medical abuse, and pretty well acknowledged as one of a little dark period there in history. This is one of those times, I think.
I think so. Now, the liberal troll that we talked about, and I normally don't, publicize opinions like hers, just because, you don't want to give the opposition publicity.
Give her the airspace,
but in this case, I think that everyone needs to see her face. Everyone needs to see the restaurant that turned down this group of moms.
Right.
I think everyone needs to see this because a lot of people will be offended by this.
Right.
I'm offended by it.
Absolutely.
I'm offended that, number one, she was treacherous and deceitful enough to infiltrate this group just because they have a counter opinion.
Right, exactly.
And then she led 30 of these women, or however many are in the group, I don't know how many are in the group, but she led them to believe that she was right there with them.
Right.
And then turned around and betrayed them. And the restaurant said, "Oh, well, we have an inclusive environment, except for you.
Except for you, right? Except we're not including. Exactly.
We're not going to include you." That's the hypocrisy of this whole movement. So, Lee, if you'll throw up that image for me, I want people to see this because they really need to see this woman, this liberal troll, just to see what she looks like, and her TikTok page. Well, maybe divine intervention here.
Right.
Maybe she doesn't need the publicity. Anyway, she's a nitwit.
Right.
And she really is just, here we go. Red Cloak Resistance, she calls herself, Katherine Johnson. Now, I'm not encouraging harassment of this woman, but I think people need to see these people because, you know, we have politicians, we have media journalists who are doxing people,
right,
who are sending out their home addresses,
right,
Supreme Court justices, which is already illegal to do. I think people need to see people like this for what they are. Now, I don't encourage anyone to attack her or harass her, please don't, but she's a nitwit.
She's a nitwit.
She's a nitwit.
Right.
Thank you, Lee. She's a pure nitwit.
Right, and really without a sense of, I mean, all they whine about is democratic fair play,
Yep.
and you know, heretofore they would have said we're all for free speech. She's not for free speech.
No, she's not for free speech.
association.
No,
okay,
absolutely
she's not for
not.
any of those things.
Absolutely
and
not.
I would say this, for people who pursue tactics like that, be careful what you wish for. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like the Japanese after they attacked Pearl Harbor talked about waking a sleeping giant. You know, at some point, people might get mad.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you remember the gentleman from What is a Woman?
Matt
Yeah.
Walsh.
No, this is what someone he interviewed. The
Oh,
gentleman that owned
okay.
a hardware store
Yeah.
or some kind of boutique or store or something. Well, he had a sign in there. He said, you know, women in the women's dressing room, men in the men's. You know, if you don't know which you are, don't go in any. Get out. I have no use for it. So, you know, that wasn't the exact wording of the sign, but it was something similar to that. Well, you know, they are greatly offended by that. But if you try to go to this Y restaurant in Durham and you're a conservative and you don't believe in the LGBTQ movement, then get out.
Right.
But we're not supposed to be offended by that. Well, I'm going to tell you, I get offended by those things.
Right.
I get offended by a group of people who claim inclusivity.
That's right.
That everything is inclusive. We want everybody to come in. But you have to swear allegiance in blood to our beliefs.
Right. So we're inclusive except for those people we want to exclude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, it's like a cult. It's like, okay,
Well,
well,
it's
you
a cult.
come in. It is definitely
It's a cult mentality.
It's you come into this group and you buy everything we say. You ask no questions.
Well, the best example of that is Elon Musk. Elon Musk was a hero to the left until 5 minutes ago when he questioned a couple of things and thought that Twitter was over the top with its suppression of certain viewpoints. And suddenly, he's this expat South African who wants to bring apartheid to America, and he's a white supremacist and a fascist and a Nazi. And I mean, he barely deviated from the party line, and all of a sudden, I've always been sort of, you know, agnostic about Elon Musk. He does some things I like, and I'm impressed with some of his products, the way he's done.
Right.
I don't trust him.
No.
You know, I don't know what he's up to. But his stock continues to go up with me a little bit because he's just, you know, in specific instances, he's doing things that I like.
Yeah.
You know, he posted a very pro-Second Amendment, an accurate perspective in keeping with what we were just saying about it a few minutes ago. I like that. He's clearly not dumb, and a lot of these people do what many people do in these high-profile existences. They do what they have to curry the favor of those around him and the authorities. I think he's decided to throw some of that out. I think he's decided, you know what, I don't care as much about that. I'm the richest person in the world. I might take a few hits, but I'm going to say some things and do some things that really maybe help us get back to maybe just a little bit of common sense. They love to talk about common sense. Transgenderism does not appeal to common sense.
No, it does not. And especially the whole thing about, and I never can keep it straight, but I think it's transgender women who claim to be lesbians. Now, these are actually men who are claiming to be women, but now they're claiming to like women.
Right. So basically, it would be as if I said, well, I identify as a woman, but I'm a lesbian woman, so I still am attracted to women.
Yeah.
Okay. Fortunately, I've studied a fair amount of math, so I understand how negatives and positives all sort of work out. So basically, you do that equation, and that works out to, I'm a man that likes women.
Yeah,
but I'm going to use this little cloak of identity to curry favor and some kind of special status and not be judged for my probably inappropriate behavior that I'm going to pursue all the darn time.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I get out of that.
Yeah. So I guess that's their pass for the women's restrooms.
Well,
you know?
that's
I'm a lesbian. I got to go to the restroom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the fact that people
I'm a lesbian.
the fact that people buy this stuff or accept it, it's like watching some of these parents, having their children at these drag queen, story hours or strip shows and dance shows.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I agree with Candace Owens, who said that those parents need to be turned over to social services.
Well,
the
they
children
do.
to be taken away. I rarely advocate for that.
I agree. Now, I've got 2 sons. I would have never considered bringing them into even just a regular bar.
Any kind of an environment like that.
Into a bar room.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't take them in there.
Right.
You just don't do that.
There's an age at which that stuff is deemed appropriate, and it isn't 4, 7, 9, 12,
Exactly.
even 15.
Well, all of that is part of that indoctrination. All of that is part of that molding, that developing mind.
That's all right.
Into inductees.
That's all right.
That's exactly what that is. That's exactly what that is. They are molding these impressionable minds. It's just like the military. They use this same understanding that you can take these kids, you isolate them from things, you put them under these conditions, and you know what? You build killing machines.
That's all right. That's all right.
And I'm going to tell you what, if you've been through the military, if you've been through basic boot camp, you understand the psychological impact of that.
Right. Right.
Now, one more nitwit thing. It's just there's no shortage of these things, and we just have time for this. But a male blood donor was turned away from a clinic because he refused to answer whether he was pregnant or not.
Right. Right. When it was palpably obvious that he was an adult male.
66 years old.
Right.
Now. 66 years old. Are you pregnant?
That's like getting carded at the grocery store when you're 60 for buying alcohol.
Exactly.
We know. There's absolutely no question about this.
Exactly.
That is such an example of the complete nonsense that is pervasive right now.
It is, and we've all filled out the doctor's, the pre-visit health history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you pregnant? That doesn't apply.
NA. Yeah.
It's like, what's wrong with people? What's wrong with the person at this clinic?
Yeah.
That did this?
Well, I visited a doctor's office a couple of years ago and was asked what my pronouns were. I just stared and said, "What the hell do you think they are?"
They're the same pronouns that have been in the English language for the last 300
right.
years.
And would obviously be attached to me as an adult male.
Yeah, exactly.
Good Lord. You're asking me that question, I don't know, she probably is made to do it, I gave her some grief about it anyway.
And the whole phoniness of that is that periodically people change their pronouns.
Right.
So it's like, well, I'm tired of those pronouns. I think I'm going to use these new pronouns, these other ones.
Well, some of them don't even make sense. The whole they, them, that's a plural.
Yeah.
That's not even grammatically coherent.
Right.
Okay, but again, that's part of what these people are about doing. They're about destroying all conventions. Look, they're telling us that math is racist. We can't even do math anymore.
Oh,
okay.
Geez. Yeah. I read an article on that the other day that it was mind-boggling how they were weaving in all of these woke ideologies into math.
Well, see, that used to be a refuge. When I was in college, one of the reasons I studied engineering is I thought this is a good way to stay out and stay away from subjective, value-based disciplines where the professor's going to judge me for opinions that pretty much haven't changed, over the years. So I thought this is a good way to bypass all that, and it was in those days.
Right.
Now, not so much.
Not now, especially in the lower grades.
Right.
And unfortunately, we're out of time again.
Yeah, it is unfortunate.
Hope you have a great week. We will see you next Saturday for more America in Danger. See you then.
Night.